Mr. President, I do want to get right to the news of this week.
Sure.
For so many Americans, the terrorism in Boston.
Yeah.
Many people have wondered if it took you right back to 9/11 when you heard it.
Well, at first, I was deeply concerned that there might have been a organized plot. I don't know all the facts. I don't think we all know all the facts, but I was deeply concerned that this could have been another highly organized attack on the country. And it still may be. Again, I don't know the facts, but I do know that it's really hard to protect the homeland. I mean, those who want to do harm only have to be right one time, and we have to be right 100% of the time. Highly organized attack on the country.
The former president remembering what it is like in the crucible. Last week, the president of 9/11 watching the president of the bombings in Boston.
Natural. It's so natural. What is so different about it?
Have you talked to police at all, or have they?
I haven't talked. Nobody is contacting me. I called FBI first. FBI line. If you have any hints, let us know. That's the number I called because, hey, knowing these two boys, strongly believing they wouldn't do this, that's why I called.
What did you
But
call
I
them?
called not right away. First reaction was anger. How could this happen? How could this do this? For what? For the sake of what? What beliefs? What prompted them to this? This reaction. But then I went through material, whatever is in there. Quickly. My first call to FBI. They could not have done this. Where are evidence? All you're showing, that's just the footage. Two guys are walking, and I found it strange. Tamerlan is walking in the front. Jahar is in the back. Why wouldn't they come together? Just, together as brothers, as I used to know them.
So then are you suspicious that maybe they really did do this?
No, I'm suspicious that this was staged. The picture was staged.
By who?
Whoever needs this.
But why would they
Whoever
target
is looking for those who need to be blamed for these attacks.
So you think they're being set up by someone else, not the authorities? You think they're being set up by someone else?
What do you mean somebody else?
Well, who is setting
Who
them
is
up?
interested in this case? When you're blowing up people and you want to bring attention to something for some purpose, you do that math. But why don't you do that math? Why me?
Police
As I said, I'm used to being set up. Before I left former Soviet Union countries, that's how I lived. Always straight way. Best student, best worker. I'm a Chechen. I have to prove myself twice, triple times more than Kyrgyz or Kazakh who live on their own land.
Police say that they were tracking your nephews overnight, and that they were following a vehicle that they were in, and that they were throwing explosives out the window.
Nobody said that to me. That's why I'm saying why I'm not getting contacted. If they want to know my opinion, give me evidence, then ask me. What do you think? Or
Heard those reports, though, that's what.
And why is it the question? Do you believe? If you have evidence, if FBI have evidence, why are you asking question? Do I believe they could do this? If they have done this, I have to believe. I just would know that they have done it.
Can you tell us about when they came to the United States, where they had been living before that?
I brought them here.
The last time the U.S. saw a bombing attempt like this was 1993. It was during the World Trade Center bombing. That explosion left 6 people dead, more than 1,000 injured. Damages in excess of $500 million. But there is a part of the World Trade Center bombings that is severely underreported. That it was the FBI presiding over the terrorists who carried out the 1993 bombing. In fact, virtually no one would know that fact today had it not been for this man, Imad A. Salim, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer. He was used by our government to penetrate a circle of Muslim extremists. According to extensive reporting by the New York Times, Mr. Salim secretly recorded hundreds of hours of conversations with the feds. Again, according to the Times, law enforcement officials were told the terrorists were building a bomb that was eventually used to blow up the World Trade Center. They planned to thwart the plotters by secretly substituting harmless powder for the explosives. The informer was to have helped the plotters build the bomb and supply the fake powder, but the plan was called off by an FBI supervisor. The account portrays the authorities as in a far better position than previously known to foil the February 26 bombing of New York City's tallest towers.
The CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine Barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993. Our government was involved in some of those. I can't say all of them because I don't know, but I do have documentation that there was government implication based on what happened in 1993. The FBI not only knew in advance they were going to bomb the World Trade Center, they furnished the ingredients for the bomb. Based on that, I would say that the FBI is the primary suspect, but also I think we have to consider the CIA. And the reason you have to consider the CIA is because when you skyjack 4 airplanes simultaneously with 19 skyjackers, that is no small operation. That took years to plan, number one, and hundreds of people had to know about it in advance. Now, our government, NSA, was monitoring bin Laden's phone calls in February 1998. Are you going to tell me for 1 minute that we didn't know about this in advance? The CIA had to know about it. The FBI had to know about it. The Mossad had to know about it. Now, MI5, British intelligence, had to know about it.
There was a bombing at the Boston Marathon. I track a lot of these things around the world through the last few years. This was all another Illuminati event or bombing right in Boston. And they show this even in their card games. This is the Illuminati card game, or the box cover of it for Stephen Jackson's games. This clown figure has a lot to do with it, and the number 5. We are in what's known as the 4th age now, and this group wants to destroy the 4th age to get to the 5th age. The horns of the bull, victory, all that stuff. This guy here, it's mutual assured distraction, MAD, mutual assured destruction. Russia versus America, Democrat versus Republican, and all of this is mapping out, showing to get to this idol, which in the Bible is the New World Order, right there. This is representing the mark of the beast. All of this right here. And they show this zombie here, but they show the head wound of the Bible. That's what a lot of things is when the transition comes in the Bible, of when the man of perdition is revealed, and the head wound in the Bible happens, and then the New World Order comes about. At this jogging incident, they have another card called joggers. No one ever suspects a harmless jogger. This group gives a +2 on any assassination attempt. This group may not be destroyed. Meaning it didn't matter if anybody was even killed or anything there. The biggest thing here was to cause terror. And in their game now, they have a +2 on an assassination attempt. There's something else coming. They keep showing this. They're working their way towards the second horseman of the Bible. Obama would be the first horseman. They want to release the second horseman, or to get everything set up so Jesus can open the seal. Either way you want to look at it. You can just say that Jesus and God, who wrote the Bible, have foretold exactly what the Illuminati and the Freemasons are going to do. to release and get everything ready for the second horseman, which means war upon the world and peace taken away, which means the head wound of the Bible, as we saw, +2 on any assassination attempt. They've gained karma, or whatever you want now, for their next big thing they're going to do, whenever that is. They have shown this right here in this next card, when the magic goes away. The pyramid for the capstone to the New World Order coming, and the end of the words of God. They've shown that these guys say the two witnesses are the words of God, the Old and the New Testament, or apply it to however you want, and they're getting ready to be taken out. See how the candles are out? The two witnesses, if you will. All of us, everybody, all of us, the brides of Christ, all that believe in the grace and mercy of our Lord and Savior. America, taking away the flag. That's what they're all gearing towards.
Holy crap, this is awesome! I haven't felt a rush like this since I won that marathon.
I'm Bob Costas, here with Boston Marathon winner Peter Griffin. Peter, how did you do it?
I'll tell you, Bob, I just got in my car and drove it. And when there was a guy in my way, I killed him. Damn phone's busted. Maybe I dialed wrong.
What are the chances?
I gotta be honest with you, Snot. I wasn't really looking forward to this night, but I had a blast.
Well, call the bomb squad, because with the blast I had, that makes 2 blasts.
Yeah, right. Okay. How good are we at that?
The mainstream media, along with Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane, have called the whole issue a hoax, as if the episode never existed. That, my friends, is not a hoax. And now TiVo is deleting the whole episode from their boxes. Quite difficult to delete an episode that is a hoax and doesn't exist. And yet this guy is on Twitter calling us abhorrent merely for talking about this weird, bizarre coincidence. The episode aired 3 weeks before the bombings. He's the one calling us abhorrent, yet he's also the one making cartoons which joke about terrorist bombings and mutilating, murdering people at the Boston Marathon.
This is on the FEMA. I'm showing you this because this is very important. Look here. On April the 9th and the 11th, they were conducting a training exercise, mitigation training course inside of Boston, Massachusetts. It shows you that they were there on the scene before the events, and that they just days that led up to the event, and it shows you that they were already in clear preparation to what was about to happen.
Some people appear to have known the imminent future on that fateful day. FEMA had arrived in New York on Monday night, ready for a bioterror drill. Spokesman Tom Kenny to Dan Rather.
To be honest with you, we arrived on late Monday night and went into action on Tuesday morning. And not until today did we get a full opportunity to work the entire site other than the spot at Church and Day to which we were deployed.
And Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York, tells ABC's Peter Jennings that he was aware the towers would be coming down.
What is going on now is a massive rescue effort.
Do you believe it's hundreds or thousands?
I really don't want to say right now, Peter. I think it's going to be a horrible number. I saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. I saw some of the firefighters who I know going into the building. And we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10-15 minutes. And we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. The World Trade Center was going to collapse. It was going to collapse. It was going to collapse.
Troops from the Massachusetts National Guards were already at the site as part of a marathon security and crowd management plans, were assisting the police as well. Now, it's funny how the troops were already on the ground just right before the event.
The news conference today, investigators said that before the race, during the race, 1 hour before the first runners were to cross the finish line, there was a complete sweep, a security sweep of that area. It's not like they never considered this a possibility, this kind of terrorist attack a possibility. They had security measures in place.
There were people on the roof with binoculars looking down onto the athletes' village at the start. There was dogs with their handlers going around sniffing for explosives, and we were told on a loud announcement that we shouldn't be concerned. This was just a drill.
Cross-country coach Allie Stevenson had just crossed the finish line.
She had come to see me at the finish, and then we were walking back down towards the finish area.
Then, right where his wife had been sitting.
And all of a sudden, we heard a loud explosion.
They even made announcements on the loudspeaker about the increased security.
They kept making announcements saying to the participants, do not worry. This is just a training exercise. Evidently, I don't believe they were just having a training exercise. I think they must have known. They must have had some kind of threat for suspicion called in.
They announced over the broadcasting system that this is a training exercise. So they openly said, this is a training exercise, this is a drill. Because there's people out there that are saying that the drill never existed, and many of them are actually police saying that they never even did the training exercise. But this is for sure. You heard that over the broadcast system, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. They did run a drill at the start of the athletes' village, yes.
Was there any prior knowledge, Joe? Because according to BostonGlobe.com, they said they were doing drills this morning for the same exact thing that happened, according to BostonGlobe.com.
One of the chief tools used by governments as a smokescreen is staging exercises or drills at the exact same time and exact same places as real events. When the Oklahoma City Federal Building was bombed, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was staging an anti-terror drill with their bomb squad on the morning of April 19, 1995, at the same time that the real event took place. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the Pentagon was running 5 separate drills, 2 of the drills targeting the exact same targets at the exact same time. That caused NORAD to stand down, believing it was just a drill. And London was no different. It's important to note that those taking part in the drills need not know that they're part of a larger operation. In fact, it's better for the conspirators that they not be informed. One of the chief reasons this is done is so that if any of the operatives carrying out the attack are caught by other elements of the government, they can simply claim that they were taking part in a drill or an exercise. NSA, Infopol 9, and Echelon-type systems that are scanning for terrorist chatter will be fooled into believing they've simply picked up part of an exercise. On the morning of 7/7 in London, there was a simultaneous exercise targeting the exact same trains, the exact same bus, at the exact same locations, at the very same time.
What we're supposed to believe is some kind of coincidence. There was also an anti-terrorist drill going on 7/7. And again, just like 9/11, They were talking about attacks on the same targets, the same kind of tube stations, and exactly the same time as the actual attack happened.
We learned of the drills of 7/7 on 7/7 from Peter Power, the head of Visor Consultants, a crisis management firm based in London. Mr. Power was the former spokesperson for Scotland Yard. Mr. Power told National British Television, ITN News, about the drills.
Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team, and the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the Underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Visor Consultants. We specialise in helping people to get their crisis management response. How do you jump from slow time thinking to quick time doing? And we chose a scenario with their assistance which is based on a terrorist attack because they're very close to a property occupied by Jewish businessmen. They're in the city, and there are more American banks in the city than there are in the whole of New York. A logical thing to do. And I've still got the...
I was going to say, how extraordinary today must feel for you as it unfolds.
He repeated himself to BBC Radio 5.
The thing that concerns me is that what are we doing for the thousands of men and women actually who are in London working? And I say that because at 9:30 this morning we were actually running an exercise for over a company of 1,000 people in London based on simultaneous bombs going off precisely at the railway stations that happened this morning. So I still have the hairs on the back of my neck standing upright.
To get this quite straight, you were running an exercise to see how you would cope with this, and it happened while you were running the exercise?
Precisely. And it was about 9:30 this morning. We planned this for a company, and for obvious reasons I don't want to reveal their name, but if they're listening they'll know it. And we had a room full of crisis managers for the first time they met. And so within 5 minutes we made a pretty rapid decision, this is the real one. And so we went through the correct drills of activating crisis management procedures to jump from slow time to quick time thinking and so on.
If we use a standard actuary employed by major insurance companies to calculate the probability of these events coinciding in a 10-year mean, we learn that the probability of this happening is greater than 1 in 300 tetragillion. To put that in perspective, that's a number with 41 zeros behind it. That is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and still more trillions times greater than all the grains of sand in all the world. To put that number in perspective, it has 41 zeros. Scientists using supercomputers have estimated that the Earth has over 7 quintillion grains of sand. A quintillion has 18 zeros.
Hi, I'm Leanne McAdoo here with an InfoWars News Bulletin. Now, we've been working really hard to try and keep track of all of the inconsistencies with the official story behind the Boston Marathon bombing. The media announced that the suspects were in custody at the Boston courthouse. The courthouse is suddenly evacuated due to a bomb threat, and the new official word is there are no suspects in custody. FBI releases footage of the suspects without ever showing them actually setting down the backpack. In fact, even Governor Deval Patrick had not seen the video. Although he described the footage showing the suspect placing the bomb near the second blast site as chilling, he then mentioned that he hadn't actually seen the footage himself, but was relayed the info by the FBI. So you're the governor of Massachusetts overseeing this manhunt, and you yourself haven't even seen the footage? The boy's father says that if the FBI kills his second son, then he will know it was a setup. Hours later, the boy is captured alive, but is conveniently unable to speak. The reports say that he suffered from a self-inflicted gunshot wound through the mouth that exited his neck. How does a person who's just shot himself in the mouth climb out and over a boat, surrendering himself to authorities? As Alex Jones reported, the Saudi national suspect, named first as a person of interest, was almost immediately cleared of suspicion after both John Kerry and Obama met with Saudi Foreign Minister Saud just after the Boston Marathon bombing. We were then told Abdul Rahman Ali Al-Arbi is being deported for reasons of national security. The Blaze released more information showing that the FBI was deporting him under Section 212(3)(b, and that he was linked somehow to the Boston bombings, but after the president's meeting with the foreign minister, the file was changed. We now know the Al-Arbi clan has major ties to al-Qaeda, and although the 20-year-old was already on a terrorist watch list, he was still given a student visa. This is all strangely similar to the flights by the bin Laden family, who were also Saudi nationals, right after 9/11. Why did the FBI ask for the public's help in finding these guys? It's already widely reported that the FBI had been alerted to Tamerlan Tsarnaev at least as early as 2011. Homeland Security said they reviewed the man's associations with suspected extremists, his travel and education history, and concluded that there wasn't incriminating information to prove he had extremist leanings. Is this just another case of the FBI allowing a terror attack to take place in order to take advantage of a crisis?
How many cops does it take to grab your guns? If Boston is an omen of things to come, there will be dozens of them of every shape, size, and brand at your door, and demanding, as we've seen in Boston, your papers, please. There were city cops, state cops, SWAT team cops, FBI cops, military cops, DHS cops, every kind of cop imaginable, just to find one man in Boston. Boston was transformed into a ghost town when an unprecedented lockdown held the entire populace prisoner in a veritable police state. And Feinstein and friends, just itching for your guns, must have been licking their chops when hearing that only cops were to be admitted, even invited, into Boston homes.
The stay-indoor request continues for the time being. That is unchanged. It is important that folks remain indoors and not open the door, keep the doors locked and not open the door unless there is a uniformed, identified law enforcement officer on the other side of it requesting to come inside.
Yes, 5 million Americans were actually ordered to stay indoors, while hordes of police armed to the teeth, complete with Black Hawk helicopters overhead, tanks on the ground.
I'm not going to stop filming.
Close your window, go back inside your house, answer the door.
And bomb-sniffing dogs engaged in door-to-door searches.
We knocked on doors to ensure that everyone was safe in their homes and that they saw the police on their streets. We did limited searches of those homes to render them safe.
Render them safe? You mean render them occupied. And door-to-door searches they did, not by your mild neighborhood cop with soft hat and friendly smile, but by swarms of anti-terrorist SWAT teams looking like they're searching for enemy combatants in Afghanistan. Now, for those familiar with police protocol, this kind of lockdown is reserved only for biochemical threats and similar high-risk disasters, not for chasing down a 19-year-old teenager running for his life. But Homeland Security wasn't going to let a crisis go to waste. For what was already on the drawing boards by Chertoff and his synagogue sidekicks, yes, Jews run DHS, as I've proven time and again, was put into action. This was a dress rehearsal for a nationwide martial law occupation. For why was this lockdown even needed when the first day posed the real threat? Bolstered by the Jewish-owned press, conditioning the masses 24/7, the airwaves showed crowds of Bostoners, many of them college-age kids, half-naked and half-drunk, actually cheering for martial law. The prototype has been set, tested, and approved. And judging by the sheep on the streets of Boston, there will be no meaningful resistance to martial law and total subjugation by the countless law enforcement agencies, starting from the Fed top, across the country, coming for your guns and your freedoms. Now, you can quote the Second Amendment to them as much as you want, but they'll laugh in your face. With a gun, pointed at your head when they begin with, "Your papers, please."
Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick does what no governor in modern U.S. history has ever done. He orders nearly 1 million people to stay home. The greater Boston area shut down. Heavily armed officers in Watertown search for the suspect, house to house. Residents trapped in their homes but anxious to talk and communicate by phone, text, and the internet.
All day long, we just kept looking at each other, my husband and I, saying, is this really happening? And we're watching the TV, and it just felt like we were inside this strange nightmare.
Those inside their homes weren't allowed to leave, and those outside weren't allowed in.
It's super scary. Like, of all the places in Boston, I never thought that they would be right here.
The dramatic scene played out in front of our cameras. Parents grabbing their children and running after spending the night hunkering in their houses and then finding themselves face to face with the muzzle of a SWAT officer's rifle.
It's a little stressful. It was a little stressful seeing these guys pointing big guns and you're holding your daughter in your arms, but they're doing the right thing. They're trying to secure the neighborhood.
Each time the SWAT team would rescue a family at the point of a gun, they would rush into the home in an armored line, guns at the ready in case the suspect was hiding inside. And each time they cleared out a resident, they did it with a force that reflected the uncertainty of not knowing who was a friend and who was a foe.
When he banged on the door, I looked up, I was shocked, and there was a gun, or 2 guns or whatever, pointing down at me, and the guys, and they said, get out, get out. I said, okay, and I wanted to know, do I get my shoes? Just get out, okay, all right.
The pattern was dramatically repeated time and again, house after house, but finally it became apparent all the families were out of their homes and the suspect was not inside.
It was terrifying.
Chaos in the streets sent people running for cover to their homes.
Oh, make it wide!
A normally quiet Watertown neighborhood.
It's nice. I don't lock my doors.
Rocked by explosive violence.
There's probably 35 cops on foot, running towards us.
Heavily armored state police, their rifles locked in place, searching house after house, looking for the second suspect in Monday's marathon bombing.
I hope the guy's not, in my house, but, I hope they catch him.
Hours of searching and still no sign of their suspect. Law enforcement teams feared the suspect may have littered explosives along the roadways. Those inside their homes weren't allowed to leave, and those outside weren't allowed in.
To use this type of high technology to go after bad guys is fine. He doesn't obviously want it used recklessly on individuals, but he seemed to draw the line that to the degree you could track down bad guys, and we have that technology, I think I've got the gist of what he said. Have at it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, when the courts approve, that's fine, but it was never meant that we would have this gigantic police force from the federal government. We had martial law up there, FBI and all these agents coming in and closing things down, going into people's houses. No, technology is fine, but it has to be guarded. And if there's a question, you guard liberty before you say, well, if we catch a bad guy, that is good. You don't give up liberty for 9 people because you might find one person. So I'd be very, very cautious about that. And I would get, the federal government is not supposed to be our police force. Yet we have over 100,000 federal officials who carry guns to enforce these laws, and they own Boston. It's criminal that that people tolerated this so much, that we tolerated this martial law and total acceptance that they can come into our houses and we can't even go out of the house. What if we wanted to go to the store and get a friend? Oh, no, you can't do that. And yet, yes, it was serious. It was a crisis. There were 3 people killed. But, we have 48 murders every single day. There's a lot of murderers out there. Do we close down cities because there's 10 murders over the weekend in Chicago? We don't do that. But here we close down a whole city, not even allowed to go to a baseball game. I mean, I think it's very, very scary when I look at some of those pictures that happened up in Boston.
The federal judge just dismissed my next guest's lawsuit against the TSA's porn and grope tactics that are an unreasonable search and seizure and a direct and profound violation of the Fourth Amendment. What happened to you with the TSA? What did they do to you? And what did the courts do to your lawsuit against them?
Here's what people need to know, Judge, is this. With the dismissal of my lawsuit, it means that every airport in America does not have to abide by the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. It means that the Patriot Act has given the TSA power that if you go out and you get abused at an airport, there is nowhere you can go because the federal judge ruled they don't have jurisdiction. Well, this is a constitutional issue. If a federal judge doesn't have jurisdiction, then who does? Well, first of all, hopefully we can wake up America. Let me repeat and tell the United States of America citizens, when you go to an airport, anywhere in this country, you are not protected by the Constitution or the Bill of Rights.
Okay, so
what other thing can I do to bring attention to the fact that this country better damn wake up to what's going on? And it's not going to, Judge, it's not going to end there. They're going into the bus stations. Tennessee has okayed what they call TSA Viper teams on the highways.
Wow, that's roving teams of TSA officers stopping you in your cars as you're driving. Are you surprised when the federal government took over for 30 seconds today every television station, cable and broadcast, and every radio station, satellite and landline in the land just to see if they could do it?
Well, I think it's also to flex their muscles so that they now know they can do it. Remember, the Internet's been running wild. The government doesn't have control of it, so the best way to control it is, it was in my last book, the president has the power right now to completely shut down the Internet. Our Congress gave the president that power. And it is time that we start looking at our Constitution and Bill of Rights again and start realizing that we mean nothing if these documents mean nothing. And right now we have a government that tells you they're meaningless.
Show your hands.
Surrounded by federal agents, a loaded gun pointed at his head. Those moments of Court Stack's life replay in his nightmares.
I was wondering, why would someone point a loaded gun at my face? I mean, what does this have to do with anything? It's open the door and point a loaded gun at someone's face who's in an office in a management position. It made me feel really scared, kind of helpless.
It was his first and only encounter with law enforcement. He will never forget it. Neither will the other employees at this small Arkansas water bottling company. Their vivid accounts of that day were used to produce an accurate reenactment of the federal raid on Mountain Pure Water Company.
We saw all of the cop cars in the commotion, and nobody could come in.
They come in with black vehicles, unmarked, blocked every entrance. There was probably 40 to 50 agents, blocked every door. They just come in full speed.
They had surrounded the facility and entered all the doors and secured the whole premises when they came in.
Yes, I was scared to move because, you know, they had guns on and you couldn't really move. You couldn't go nowhere.
First of all, it was ridiculous. I mean, there was nobody here that needed manned with firearms or to be guarded.
Well, it was almost like you'd watch Cops or something, or watch these drug raid shows where they would kind of come through the door, just everybody storms in and just kind of pushing everybody to the side.
And there's police everywhere with guns, and it just blew me away. I didn't know what was going on, you know. I thought maybe it was drugs or they was after a felon or something, but I mean, they have a lot of police.
I felt violated. I felt the company was violated. Everyone here, we were all in shock.
They came through the door and they pushed us over to the wall and went down through the hallway. They were very serious. They were very well intending to take control of the facility and to intimidate us in the sense of complying with them.
We were saying, oh my gosh, what's going on? And but as far as being able to really say something to each other, we couldn't. We had them all on top of us, no matter what. You know, I mean, they were everywhere. They were everywhere.
At first, everybody thought it was some type of drug raid or something because there were so many people, or, you know, so many cops.
But this was no drug raid. No violent criminals hiding inside the walls of this facility. In fact, employees here were shocked when they discovered the real reason behind the terrifying paramilitary Gestapo-style raid. This raid was about securing paperwork concerning financial transactions of the company's owner, John Stacks. Paperwork they would have gladly shared at the request of a single agent. No need for an aggressive raid by 40 to 50 armed agents.
Well, in my opinion, the raid itself was totally unnecessary. The government has subpoena power with the grand jury. They could have subpoenaed anything they wanted to, and I've known John Stacks for a long time. John would have given them whatever they subpoenaed. There was simply no need to bring 40 or 50 officers out here and storm this place like they did.
John Stacks, the company's owner, was not at the plant when the raid started. He and his other son, Ryan, an attorney, were shocked to discover upon arrival that Stacks could not even enter his own facility, nor provide his employees with a company attorney. He says one agent even threatened to arrest him for obstruction of justice.
They told us to sit down. They told us to shut up. They told us that they would deal with us in their own time, and told us again we needed to leave or they would arrest us for obstruction of justice. And, you know, I told them this was my place of business. I was the owner, and I thought I had a right to know what was going on.
My father had asked to go in, and they said no, he could not. And I'd asked to go in, they said no. And I said, well, as an attorney and representing Mountain Pure, I would like to be present in what searches or things you're conducting. And they said no. And we found out they were conducting interviews, and I said, well, I'd like to sit in on those. We were also told no.
And what I'm going to say is a direct quote. We're the federal government. We can do what we want, when we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. I was blessed to have a father that fought against Nazis in World War II. It's my generation's turn to fight. The problem is, it's on this country we gotta fight. I'm not a militant. They've thrown the Constitution away. We did not have lawyers. I requested that a lawyer the corporate attorney be contacted. That was thrown out the window. My wife saw this on TV. I could tell by my ringtone she was calling. I could hear my phone ring. I'm not allowed to answer it. Am I arrested? Am I detained? No one would tell us anything. Don't worry about it. Just sit down. They threw our liberties out the window. They treated us like third-class citizens. If people are not outraged, they need to be. This used to be America. Now it's not.
The language they use, the profanity they used over and over again, screaming and hollering at me, calling me and referring to me as Old Man Stacks. And then one of the law officers there kept telling me, well, why don't you just touch me, Old Man Stacks? I'll show you what a federal officer can do to you. And did everything he could to provoke me, and literally hovering over me and literally spitting in my face as he was hollering and screaming at me.
Meanwhile, inside the building, agents shut down plant operations. The assembly line came to a screeching halt. All employees were herded to one room, their cell phones confiscated, as well as pocket knives or other items that could be perceived as weapons.
They disconnected all the phones, they disconnected the internet, and we was just left waiting. It was embarrassing to see them just bust the door with no one knowing what was going on. And then they act like the employees were just a bunch of drug dealers.
Again, I would have never fathomed that something to this extent could take place, in the United States. And it was one of the wildest things, the craziest things that I've ever been a part of. We were being treated similarly to what you would with some type of terrorist, essentially. They pretty much told us under these circumstances we really didn't have any rights at the time, and it was. I don't really know that I can put words to the feeling to what I was feeling other than just disbelief.
What agents did next further compounded that disbelief. They seized computers, laptops, employees' personal items, flash drives, and financial records. 82 boxes of materials. 8 months has passed since the raid. Mountain Pure Company officials say 85% of the seized items have not been returned. Employees who spent most of the day and evening with agents also made another discovery about the raid and the agents involved.
I tried to visit with a few of the agents and overheard a few of the agents talking, and it came to my attention that a majority of the approximately 50 agents had came from out of town, East Coast, West Coast, all over the U.S.
News agencies flooded to the small company, and as news accounts of this big raid hit the airwaves, Stacks was flooded with phone calls from business owners around the country. They shared horror stories about their own businesses subjected to armed, aggressive, intimidating raids by the Justice Department and the Criminal Investigation Division of the Internal Revenue Service. Stories that sounded eerily familiar. Duncan Outdoors was one of those businesses.
I just kept saying, what have we done? Or are we being arrested? And I did ask, I said, do we need to call an attorney? And the one guy looked at me and said, you can call an attorney, but it won't do any good. We're the IRS. We can do anything we want.
So the tactics are definitely Gestapo-type tactics that should not be happening in the United States of America. It's similar to what you might see in a SWAT raid on a drug house. And that's what a lot of people thought when they saw this.
The CEO of Gibson Guitar can certainly relate. His business was raided twice. The raid tactics sounding awfully familiar.
It was very much like a drug raid or, terrorist raid, actually. The agents or officers, whatever they were not friendly. They were armed, they were hostile, they were intimidating. But to have it done twice and not having been charged with anything is really bizarre. We incurred losses, we incurred military-style action, we had seizures, our workplace was closed, and we had threats that they would close us, period, and yet we hadn't been charged with a single thing.
The raids cost Gibson Guitar Company well over $5 million in goods seized, work stoppage, and legal expenses, all without having to prove to any judicial body that anyone with the company was guilty of anything. And in the case of the Duncans, who had also not been charged with a crime, the government even seized money from their bank accounts without telling them.
If the federal government could come in before you're convicted of any crime and take hundreds of thousands of dollars out of your bank account, shut down your business, tell your employees what to do, keep you from your family. I mean, at what point is it so overkill that no reasonable person would be able to respond rationally, reasonably, defend themselves? I mean, nobody could do that. I mean, to me, it just seems like if you can walk into the bank and I don't even know about it and wipe out my bank account, where does it stop?
It's no secret that IRS audits of small businesses have soared under the Obama administration. The tax division of Eric Holder's Justice Department, which supervises all criminal proceedings under Internal Revenue laws, has been very busy. Various articles on the net refer to it as small business bullying, citing a 32% increase in the number of audits of small to medium-sized businesses between 2009 and 2011, since Eric Holder took over the Justice Department.
I think over the course of several years, what we've seen is an increase in a really a paramilitary style raid that's going on small businesses. We've seen that increase for so long, and when I say a paramilitary raid, I really mean it is a paramilitary raid. It's a specific tactic that is a military tactic. It's a shock and awe. It's designed to create confusion, instability, disruption, and then to take advantage of that confusion, that instability, and disruption.
Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution guarantees, in fact it says, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. So every American fundamentally has the right not to be detained, and this is important, anywhere. Not just in prison, has a right not to be detained anywhere. So that is an enormous concern because the stories we're hearing, apparently that is happening. And that doesn't even go into the Miranda requirements of being read your personal rights and being afforded the opportunity to have an attorney, which we're also being told as being abridged. The two pillars of freedom and liberty in the country are the rights to property and the rights to privacy. So when those are abridged or they're somehow injured, then there's an enormous constitutional concern on the most fundamental guarantees of liberty and freedom as an American citizen.
Hi, this is Dan Badani reporting from Watertown, and I'm in the town here, and every business is closed. We're going to take a ride to Watertown to see basically if there's any military posts, checkpoints, and so on, and hopefully we can get through without getting arrested here. But I'm looking around, every store is closed, the banks are closed, the business, the buildings are all closed, and there's a good look here. And we're going to drive around also. It's like a ghost town here in the middle of a business day. The KFC's closed, the gas station's closed. We're at a McDonald's and it's a total lockdown. So you have police all over McDonald's. I guess in the parking lot here. Hey, they closed?
We are closed.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir. Okay. I understand. I know you can't get on this road. How do I get?
You can get down this road.
Okay.
This is just a secure point for the police station.
Oh, okay.
You can go straight. However, Watertown Square is pretty limited. Going straight, you'll see the next roadblock anyway.
This is Dan Badandi reporting. We're on Cambridge Street where they detonate controlled explosives, and they're not giving the media no information at all right now, and just people gathering around, we're asking questions, what happened, and we just talked to a woman who is barred from a house that lives on the street. She's been barred since 7 o'clock this morning with no information given. What kind of announcements did they make to you?
This morning, they told us to put our clothes on and get out because they're evacuated from the street.
Absolutely. And they give you any information at all as when you can return to your home?
Nope. None.
Does it make you suspicious that you have feds crawling all over the place?
Yes. It made me very nervous this morning seeing FBI blocking off our street and then going down the street and parking in front of people's houses. That made me nervous.
Did you get a warning on TV or the radio?
On TV, yes.
Okay, what was that warning?
As far as like staying home, or they basically told us to stay home and not come out because it was a what do you call it, in shelter lockdown all over Cambridge.
Did they disclose to you when they knocked at your door? Did they disclose to you what was happening?
No, they didn't. Just an evacuation.
So they didn't tell you anything at all why you're being evacuated?
No.
Did they give you any information at all when you could return to your home?
No, they didn't.
So you've been stuck out here for about, 12 hours now?
Yes.
With the National Guard, did you ever hear of Posse Comitatus?
No.
It's in the Constitution established by Ben Franklin. It prohibits the military to police on American soil to prevent dictatorship.
I think under circumstances where there's terrorists blowing up bombs left and right, it might be okay to have the National Guard about.
Oh no, absolutely. That's what they're here for, to do that, but not to police on America. In other words, they're not allowed to arrest people or give any orders. They're allowed to help out disasters, but that's it.
And I believe that's what they're doing.
Well, I mean, we've seen National Guards giving the police orders and also policing. They even told us we'd be arrested if we cross different lines.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a state of emergency.
Okay, and so far it's been about 10 hours or so. And did they give you information as to when you can return to your home?
Well, I can find information by myself through my iPhone, but they didn't give any information.
Anyone cross the line to be taken into custody? Media, civilian, anyone, okay?
This is the police state, yeah. And you're telling us
I'm telling you to cross the police line, you'll be taken into custody.
The New World Order property, yeah. Thanks for serving the Constitution, sir. Yep, right there.
You with the media?
Yes, I
media
am.
credentials? Let me see them.
Yes, I am.
You see media credentials? Free speech systems?
The #1 alternative media in the world, so.
Okay, well, Dan, we work together or work separate. Don't matter to me. Stay behind the line.
Oh, could you please tell us what's going on now? I mean, did they blow up the bombs there? Or?
Sir, your behavior right now seems to be a little irrational to me. This is a very fluid and dangerous situation.
I understand,
So if you don't stop talking, you're going to be removed. Press or no press? Sir, you seem to be a little irrational right now.
I'm not irrational. It's live on camera. Am I irrational? Am I irrational?
I'm glad I didn't shave this morning, okay? Listen, your behavior to me appears to be irrational, confrontational. This is a very dangerous, fluid situation. If you're not understanding me, I'll take it a step further and help you understand.
One question though. Who's going to give us information?
Well, this is an actual witness who was at the hospital, and I want you to listen to what he has to say real quick. It's quite interesting.
Crime scene. A day and a half later, and an FBI guy came over. He said, "Give me your camera." I said, "I've got 2,000 pictures of my family on there. Give me your camera." And I said, "Okay." And he went to it. He went to the pictures I just took of the crime scene, which was outside the hotel, right there when the bomb left it. And he went and deleted every one of them. So you can have all the other pictures. I got pictures of 25 ambulances lined up, all ready to go. Guardsmen, policemen, police cruisers all over the place.
Now, he had FBI came to this guy, and this is a guy who was in the Boston Marathon because he had a family member that was running in the marathon, and he went there to document, his family, and and he took pictures of the crime scene as the event unfolded. The FBI confiscated his camera and deleted everything that was on his camera instead of using his information that he had on his camera to help, to locate and find any suspicious suspects that would be in that area. You would think this would be the moment that this officer would jump on the advance opportunity to do so. But instead, this law enforcement deleted information which would become the act of a cover-up. So in other words, what was it that they didn't want the public to see? What was it that they're trying to conceal from us? Because this proves without a shot of a doubt there was cover-up. Also, mobile phone surveillances by police targets millions annually. So in other words, this becomes criminal, and it becomes harassment and a violation of our constitutional rights. So this is basically everything that the Homeland Security are doing. Homeland Security and laptop seizures, interviews with Representative Sanchez. Will Congress act to curb the shocking abuses of U.S. citizens encountering when re-entering their own country? See, they're even admitting it that even American citizens coming from abroad in another foreign land, coming back home, are now deemed as being terrorists, especially when they have cameras and laptops. And of course they're going to have all this because they've taken pictures where they're traveled to. But they're making everyone fear everyone, and when there's no imminent threat, ladies and gentlemen. But the only threat that we have all unfolded and investigated and had discovered is our own government is the only people that are deemed as that imminent threat.
Honorary President of the Supreme Court of Italy and former senior investigative judge Ferdinando Imposimato has accused the Bilderberg Group of conspiring with a right-wing organization called Ordine Nuevo, which means New World or New Order. accusing them of committing various acts of terrorism. In a new book, The Republic of the Unpunished Massacres, he published a document which gives proof to this connection. And about the document, what he said was, quote, "When it comes to slaughter, it speaks of the Bilderberg Group. I believe this document. I did tests, and I can say that behind the strategy of tension and the slaughters, there's also the Bilderberg Group, maneuvering using terrorists and Masons," end quote. He claims he was given the document by a former operative of the Italian New Order. Members of that participated in numerous deadly terrorist attacks, according to these documents, including the 1969 Piazza Fontana bombing, the 1970 Rome Messina train attack. These are huge, by the way, if you know anything about Italian history in that time. These were really huge. The 1974, the Piazza della Loggia bombing in Brescia, and the Italic Express bombing, which was a train attack, I believe, in 1974.
Well, you know, what's interesting is him mentioning the strategy of tension. The strategy of tension refers to Operation Gladio, which was a NATO Cold War kind of stay-behind project that sought to create an exponential political climate in Europe by having its agents carry out terrorist attacks, which were then blamed on either the far left or the far right, whatever political group was convenient. You know, essentially this was used to kind of demonize political opposition and force the Republic to turn to the state to ask for greater security. Right. That exact quote came from Vincenzo Vinciguerra. He said, and because he was essentially a Gladio agent, this is from his words and sworn testimony, "You had to attack civilians, the people, women, children, innocent people, unknown people, far removed from any political gain. The reason was quite simple. They were supposed to force these people, the Italian public, to turn to the state to ask for greater security. This is the political logic that lies behind all the massacres and the bombings which remained unpunished because the state cannot convict itself or declare itself responsible for what happened." What makes this piece of paper important is it shows that this group is potentially, you know, not just talking about what they hope to do or what they hope the direction of the world will go in. They're actually, you know, cavorting with terrorists to make that happen. Right. You know, and to push their agenda. And they don't make any bones about having agenda. I mean, you go to their website and they talk about.
They explain their agenda.
We get together to, you know, because we're the most powerful people and we feel that it's good to be on the same, you know, strategy and the same page on things. Right. And it's a dangerous group because here's the thing: when you have, let's say, you know, Secretary of State from the U.S. goes over there. I know that Hillary Clinton's been spotted there a few times. When you have people like that going there and then they make a pledge to the Bilderberg Group, just even a pledge of secrecy to them, that's actually in violation of their oath of office.
Those who have studied history know that nothing invigorates and empowers an authoritarian regime more than a spectacular act of violence, some sudden and senseless loss of life that allows the autocrat to stand on the smoking rubble and identify himself as the hero. It's at moments like this that the public, still in shock from the horror of the tragedy that has just unfolded before them, can be led into the most ruthless despotism. Despotism that now bears the mantle of security. Acts of terror and violence never benefit the average man or woman. They only ever benefit those in positions of power. This is why Nero fiddled while Rome burned. It gave him a chance to throw out the Christians to the lions and rebuild the capital of the Roman Empire in his own image. This is why Hearst and the warmongers of the emerging American Empire were delighted by the destruction of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898. It gave them the excuse they needed to rouse the public into supporting the Spanish-American War. This is why Israel attacked the USS Liberty in 1967 during the Six-Day War, strafing and torpedoing it relentlessly for hours in a vain attempt to send it to the bottom. The Israelis believed that the loss of the Liberty could be blamed on Egypt and draw the Americans into war. This is why there are hundreds of documented examples of government staging attacks in order to blame them on their political enemies. In every civilization, in every culture, in every historical period, authoritarians have known that spectacular acts of violence help to further consolidate their own power and control. And sadly, throughout history, there have been all too many willing to allow attacks to occur, to pretend that attacks have occurred, or even to attack their own population in order to further their political agenda. To think that such staged provocations and false flag attacks no longer occur would be as unrealistic as believing that human nature itself has changed, that powerful people no longer seek to increase their power, that influence is never used for deceit or manipulation, that lies are no longer told to satisfy greed or slake the thirst for control. It is to believe that our society is immune from those things that we have seen in every other society, in every other era. In short, it's a dangerous delusion. The people are once again learning the power of this delusion. They are learning the extent to which they have been lied to. They are once again studying their history. The Russians are learning how the FSB was caught planting bombs in Moscow in 1999 during a terror scare that swept Putin into power and stirred the public into supporting the Second Chechen War. They are learning how their autocratic ex-president came to power campaigning on the graves of those his old FSB cronies had killed. The Israelis are learning how Mossad has been caught time and again posing as the very Muslim terrorists they claim to be opposing. They are learning how Israel uses the specter of terror to further extend their blank check drawn on American funds to expand their police state at home and maintain their hardline stance, the world's sixth largest nuclear superpower supposedly threatened by the possibility that one of their neighbors may one day obtain a single nuclear weapon. The British are learning how their SAS officers were caught dressing up as Arabs in Iraq, driving around with trucks full of munitions, shooting at police to stir up ethnic tensions, and ensure that permanent bases could be built in the region. They are learning how Harun Aswat, the supposed mastermind behind the 7/7 bombings, was working for British intelligence. They are learning how British military intelligence took part in IRA bombings. The Indians are learning how the Mumbai attack was helped by a U.S. agent who is cooperating with investigators so that he won't face questioning by foreign authorities. The Canadians are learning how their own provincial police dressed up as protesters in 2007 and threatened violence against other police in order to force a crackdown on peaceful protests. And the Americans. The Americans are learning that there were multiple bombs found, dismantled, and taken out of the Alfred P. Murrah building on April 19, 1995. They are learning that Timothy McVeigh had written a letter to his sister in which he claimed to be in the Special Forces for the U.S. Army. They are learning the bombing was being directed by FBI informants, just as the 1993 World Trade Center bombing was. They are learning about 9/11 and the Gulf of Tonkin and Operation Northwoods and their own Army counterinsurgency manuals that teach officers how to commit false flag attacks to blame on their enemies. In short, the people are learning the truth. And now we see the same build-up to a false flag event taking place that we saw in 1995. At that time, the U.S. had a corporate media desperate to fling mud at anyone concerned by the actions of their government, and it had a government that was desperately unpopular. Today, we see the exact same factors at play. If anything, the situation today is worse than it was in the run-up to the Oklahoma City bombing, with media consolidation meaning that groups of concerned citizens like the Oath Keepers are being attacked by the controlled minions on both the left and the right. And now it is not just the militia that is being demonized by the establishment. It is veterans and gun owners, third-party supporters and libertarians, anti-war protesters, and human rights campaigners, people who are upset with a government giving trillions to the banks that have engineered our current financial crisis. In short, everyone is now a potential terrorist according to the governmental and media agencies that deign to limit our range of acceptable opinion and control dissent. Even the word terrorist means something more than it did back in 1995. Now, after the false flag attack of 2001 allowed the passage of the Patriot Act, after the boogeyman of Al-Qaeda gave the NSA the opportunity to announce that they were collecting everyone's emails and everyone's telephone calls, after the former White House press secretary came out and admitted that the Bush administration had made up terror threats in order to scare the people into supporting the government, now we know what the real definition of terrorism is. It is governments scaring their own populations into line. But there is something else that's different now from what it was in 1995. The people are learning something else about terrorism. They are not terrorists for speaking out against their government. They are not terrorists for wanting the government to stop selling their children into servitude to pay bankers their bonuses. They are not terrorists for pointing out that the FBI and the CIA and Mossad and MI6 are behind every major international terrorist event. The people are not terrorists because they do not want to see more death. They do not want more destruction. The spilling of the blood of their fellow citizens is not in their interests. Death and destruction only ever serve the governmental and financial and industrial interests who always grow in power and wealth in the wake of every tragedy. Time and again, the people pay with their lives, and the governments and the banks and the war machine only grows and prospers. The people do not want terrorism because it does not benefit them. It only benefits the existing power structure. And this time, if there is another staged event to blame on the government's enemy of the day, the people will know who to blame.